All right, get ready for a deep dive into a family saga that's, well, it's dark and twisted.
Oh, yeah. Definitely twisted.
Today we're going deep into Karin Slaughter's Pretty Girls.
Oh, okay.
And don't let the title fool ya. This story is anything but sunshine and roses.
Nope.
We're going to be uncovering some seriously messed up secrets, lies, and crimes.
It's the kind of story that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about family
Exactly.
and how trauma can just echo through generations.
Right from the start, we're thrown into the action with a death. Paul Scott.
Yeah, Paul Scott seems like an ordinary guy on the surface, but
He's married to Claire and
he's also the former abuser of her sister, Lydia.
seriously messed up family dynamics right there.
For sure. And Paul's death kind of acts like this catalyst.
Oh, yeah.
It brings those estranged sisters back together.
To face their past.
Yeah, a past that's full of pain and unanswered questions.
The novel does a great job of using this tragedy to expose all the cracks in this family's foundation.
It's like peeling back layers of a really disturbing onion.
And those secrets, they're dark, really dark.
Hmm.
We're talking about the disappearance of their older sister, Julia.
Decades ago.
This mystery just hangs over everything.
Each sister carries the weight of Julia's disappearance differently, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Claire clings to this tiny sliver of hope that Julia might still be alive somehow.
While throwing herself into her marriage with Paul.
Yeah, and then you have Lydia grappling with the trauma of Paul's abuse.
And the agonizing uncertainty of not knowing what happened to Julia.
Right. And then things take this really sinister turn.
When Claire finds Paul's secret lair hidden away in his garage,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
it's a full-blown surveillance setup.
Cameras, monitors.
Enough equipment to make a tech expert jealous.
This discovery really starts to peel back the layers of Paul's psyche.
It shows he's not just some grieving husband,
He's a voyeur.
totally obsessed with control and manipulation.
And those videotapes he's got,
They're way more disturbing than just home movies.
you could say that again.
And then, bam, the story plunges into the truly horrific. Claire finds a collection of snuff films.
Whoa.
We're talking graphic depictions of women being abused and murdered.
It's a punch to the gut.
And Claire realizes that Paul wasn't just watching these films.
He was making them.
He was actively involved.
I think what makes Claire's journey so compelling is that it mirrors the struggle so many of us would face.
Oh, yeah.
Denial, disbelief, and then slowly having to accept this truth that shatters your whole world.
The story picks up even more when the case of a missing teenager, Anna Kilpatrick, comes into play.
Yes, Anna Kilpatrick.
Her body is found with markings that are eerily similar to those in Paul's films.
That suggests a terrifying connection.
And suddenly the stakes are even higher.
Absolutely. It shifts from a personal tragedy to something much larger.
Right, a whole network of victims.
It forces Claire and the readers to confront the bigger picture.
The impact of Paul's crimes on so many lives.
The ripples of his actions.
And just when you think it can't get any more twisted, we learn about Sam Carroll.
The sister's father.
He was tangled up in Paul's mess, too.
That's right.
This revelation adds another layer of betrayal and trauma to the family.
Sam's involvement adds this moral ambiguity to the story.
Oh, for sure.
He's driven by love for his daughter
But his actions make you question how far someone would go.
to protect their loved ones.
And the consequences that follow those choices.
It's heavy stuff
The tension explodes when Claire confronts Paul
about his crimes.
about everything. His role in Julie's disappearance, his exploitation of Sam.
This confrontation is the turning point.
It leads to a struggle, and ultimately, Paul's death.
It's a powerful moment for Claire.
She's not a victim anymore.
She takes control, exposes the truth.
Takes charge of the situation.
All this is going down. Lydia makes a discovery. Julia's locket, hidden in a well on the property.
After years of uncertainty, the mystery of Julie's disappearance is finally solved.
A glimmer of closure.
So we've got a dead husband, a missing sister found, and a whole lot of secrets unearthed.
And that's just the beginning.
This deep dive into Pretty Girls is just getting started.
Buckle up.
Things are about to get even more intense.
Oh, yeah.
So Paul's death brings the sisters together, but what actually happened that night?
Well, the story starts with what seems like a random attack on Claire and Paul in a dark alley.
Okay.
But it wasn't random at all.
What do you mean?
Paul planned the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, as part of this elaborate plan to disappear.
Oh, wow.
He drugged Claire, snuck off while she was unconscious, and just vanished.
So he faked his own death.
Exactly.
But why go to all that trouble?
Remember those snuff films Claire found?
Uh-huh.
Turns out Paul was making a fortune off of them.
How much?
Over $3 million.
Seriously?
Yeah, and his little side hustle caught the attention of the FBI.
That's not good.
Not good at all.
What happened?
Well, this FBI agent, Fred Nolan, approaches Paul with a deal. Turn informant or face prosecution.
So what did he do?
Paul chose a third option, the more drastic one. Fake his death and run off with all the money.
Wow, talk about a double life.
No kidding.
It's no wonder Claire had such a hard time believing the truth about him.
Exactly. And remember, those private detectives Paul hired to follow Claire and Lydia.
Yeah, I thought that was just him being creepy and obsessive.
It was definitely creepy, but as Claire digs deeper, she finds this chilling pattern.
What kind of pattern?
Paul was gathering information on women who had been sexually assaulted.
Oh, wow. He wasn't just a voyeur.
No, he was targeting these women for his films.
Ah, it's awful.
He was using those detectives as part of his whole sick scheme.
So he was tracking these women, figuring out their routines, and then setting up their abductions?
Exactly. He was meticulous, always staying one step ahead of the law.
This is terrifying. It's like something out of a nightmare.
And the details of his operation are really disturbing. He had this secret house.
The Fuller house.
Right, and that's where he'd take his victims and film everything.
And their own father was involved in all of this?
I know, it's hard to believe.
How did Sam get mixed up with Paul?
It all comes back to Sam's love for Claire. When he found out about Paul's secret, he threatened to expose him.
I bet Paul didn't like that.
Nope, but Paul was a master manipulator.
Yeah, he was.
He convinced Sam that the only way to protect Claire was to help him cover up his crimes.
Oh, wow.
He played on Sam's fears, his weaknesses, his desperation to keep his daughter safe.
So Sam got trapped.
He became complicit in Paul's awful acts.
It's a tragic example of good intentions gone wrong.
Absolutely. It shows how anyone can be manipulated.
Like, especially when love and fear are involved.
It's heartbreaking.
But there are moments of courage in this story too, right?
Definitely. Like when Claire realizes the FBI is more interested in protecting Paul than bringing him to justice.
So what does she do?
She decides to take matters into her own hands.
She confronts him.
At the Fuller house,
It's the climax of the story.
Claire finally confronts Paul about everything.
Julia's disappearance, the manipulation of her father,
It all comes pouring out and ends in a struggle.
and Paul's death.
And that fire Claire started, it wasn't random.
What was it then?
It destroys the Fuller house and all the evidence of Paul's crimes.
It's like a symbolic cleansing.
Exactly, a turning point for both Claire and Lydia.
A chance for a new beginning.
And in the middle of the fire, Lydia makes a discovery.
Julia's locket.
Yeah, in a well on the property.
Wow, so after all these years, they finally know what happened to Julia.
It brings the story full circle.
Provides closure.
And this sense of closure extends beyond the sisters. Remember Congressman Johnny Jackson?
The one who was involved in this snuff film ring?
Yeah, his involvement gets exposed.
So he's brought down.
It brings some measure of justice to the victims and their families.
That's good.
It shows that even powerful people aren't above the law.
Justice can prevail.
It's a powerful message.
But what about Claire and Lydia? Did they ever find peace?
That's a tough question. The novel ends with them starting to come to terms with their past,
Finding solace in each other.
taking those first steps toward rebuilding their lives.
It sounds like there's some hope for Claire and Lydia, but this healing process, it's not easy, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. It's messy and it takes time. Their journey's definitely not over when the book ends.
Right.
They still have doubts and anger, and the trauma from their past just lingers.
Pretty Girls doesn't shy away from that reality.
Not one bit. Slaughter portrays it all very realistically.
I found their relationship with their mother, Helen, really interesting. She seems distant at first, but there's so much more to her story.
Definitely. She's a product of her own experiences with loss and denial. Imagine losing your daughter like that.
Julia just vanishing.
The uncertainty, the not knowing.
It's devastating.
It is, and it seems like Helen coped by just shutting down emotionally.
Like she couldn't handle the thought of Julia being gone.
Exactly. It's a way of protecting herself from the pain.
But it creates this distance between her and her other daughters.
They see her as cold and uncaring.
Like she doesn't understand their pain.
And of course, Paul uses that to his advantage.
Classic abuser tactic.
Isolate Claire. Make her dependent on him.
Convince her he's the only one she can trust.
It's heartbreaking to see how easily he manipulates her.
But Helen, even though she's withdrawn, she sees through Paul sometimes.
Oh yeah, she senses something's off about him.
But she doesn't fully confront it.
Her warnings to Claire are kind of vague.
Like she's afraid to say it out loud.
Maybe she's afraid of acknowledging her own role in all this.
Her own guilt and denial.
It's so complex, all these layers of emotions.
It's not until Paul's crimes are revealed that Helen really confronts her past.
Her denial, her mistakes,
It's painful but necessary for her to heal.
and for her to reconcile with her daughters.
And that confrontation leads to a really beautiful moment.
Mm-hmm.
These three women who've been through so much, they come together,
Acknowledge their shared pain.
start to rebuild their relationships.
It's a testament to the power of family
Forgiveness.
and choosing to heal.
And finding Julia's locket in the ashes of the Fuller house, it feels so symbolic.
Absolutely. It's like they're reclaiming their history,
Projecting the darkness.
holding on to the love that's still there.
That locket represents hope.
It shows the strength of those family bonds
Pretty Girls isn't just a thriller. It's a deep dive into the effects of trauma.
on individuals and families.
It's about resilience, finding the strength to face the darkness.
The possibility of healing and growth after unimaginable pain.
Ultimately, it's a story about hope.
Hope for justice, hope for healing, hope for a better future.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it makes you think.
About the secrets we keep
The choices we make.
and the impact those choices have.
One thing that really struck me was the importance of being vigilant.
Noticing the red flags.
Paul was able to do what he did because people ignored their instincts.
They believed his lies.
We have to speak up when something feels wrong.
Trust our gut.
Protect ourselves and others.
Predators like Paul thrive in the shadows,
And Pretty Girls also shows the power of confronting the truth.
no matter how much it hurts.
Facing our demons is the first step to healing and growing.
It's about breaking free from those cycles of secrecy and abuse,
Reclaiming our lives.
finding a path toward hope and healing.
It's not easy, but it's so important. If you want a story that will stay with you,
One that makes you think about family, trauma, and the choices we make.
then pick up Pretty Girls. You won't be disappointed.
It'll make you question things.
Like, how do we know if a connection is real or manipulation?
How do we protect ourselves from those who might want to hurt us?
These are questions worth asking.
And Pretty Girls definitely brings them to light.
And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into this twisted and powerful story. It's a story that'll stay with you long after you finish it, making you think about your own relationships, the secrets we all keep, and the paths we choose when faced with darkness.